point and what's available when you walk into a well-stocked humidor to shop. So the idea of starting a cigar company in this environment is almost ridiculous.
So what sealed the deal for you to get into the cigar business? Was there a trigger that, prompted you to go like all in, essentially?
Yeah, there really was. I mean, I had been, the idea was always there. And like I said, I had to have two things. One is I needed to get my hands on what was, I thought, a fairly good blend out of the gate. Like I said, there's a lot of good sticks out there. So I needed something that I thought was a good cigar. So I had been playing with the cigar over and over again and smoking it for quite a while. And then I just kind of started handing to people, and people really liked it. The second thing is I really wanted to bring something a little bit unique marketing-wise to the industry. I'm not saying that I'm, breaking any new ground by any means, but I wanted it to be fairly transparent. And look, I'll just say what it is. I'll tell you what I've done right. I'll tell you what I've done wrong. I know what I know. I don't walk out there and say, oh, I'm an expert in tobacco and all this other stuff. I mean, I was born in, Wisconsin, as most tobacco makers are. So we work the field. Well, it's tobacco or dairy products, and dairy just has a better PR agent. So
it's all the same thing.
It's just so I decided, well, if I was going to do it, I wanted to just be wide open about it. And what it kind of manifested to being is like, look, this is my journey from starting from one stick to being in the Dominican Republic, to jumping over to Nicaragua and learning to blend that tobacco and grow the company. I wanted it to be very open communication-wise. Was the first person to actually put Twitter on the outside of the band. And so every one of my cigars has my personal Twitter account, and I actually interact and talk to people on that. So I really wanted that conversation to exist from the very, very beginning. And it just blew up. I mean, people really liked it, and long before people even could get the sticks, we were already having conversations about it, and it had to grow rapidly.
Smart move.
Fred, it's interesting on a marketing standpoint. I was just talking about the different social networks, and the ones that I personally interact with and don't just blast content out to blindly, I get the best response from. And it's that personal interaction that I think really makes them valuable. So
yeah, I have a lot. I'm a marketing company, which I'm still involved with to some extent. We had a lot of clients, and they all walk up with whatever they heard that week that they should be involved in. It's like, it's Twitter, it's LinkedIn, it's Facebook. And I would say that probably, 80% or better of the clients that I had, Twitter was not the right vehicle for them. It's a very big animal. It's a lot of conversation. It can be very maintenance heavy. And it was just a natural fit for the cigar industry.
Yeah, yeah.
Sure.
So where does the name Nomad come from, and what does it mean?
Well, basically, it's pretty much what it sounds like. One of my hobbies is traveling, and my wife and I travel all over the world. And I wanted something that basically represented that. So even looking at the logo, or at least the initial logo, and probably an essence of it going forward on the other bands, you've got the word nomad, which obviously, you go place to place. It's got a compass in the band. It's got wings in the band. Some of it's got a cross in there left over from, a lot of motorcycle riding for me. So it was really just kind of that whole package, if you will. What it manifested into was the concept of I was going to go wherever I wanted to go to create the cigar I wanted to create. So even though it started in the Dominican Republic, and I didn't necessarily know that it would blow up to the way it did, but, it makes sense that I can put out a Dominican cigar, and this is the best I believe you can get out of there. I can go to Nicaragua, and I can create 1, 2, 3 blends out of there and go, look, this is a representation of that region. And then I can look at other parts of the world and, other tobaccos and put that out as well.
Interesting.
So, yeah, speaking of that, with all the different tobaccos available to blenders, what made you start with Dominican tobacco?
Honestly, I just was kind of handed a contact that had a really good construction. I mean, the guy was very good, had a really good blend going. So it just kind of fell in my lap by some contacts, and so and it was, in retrospect, it was a very good learning ground, because then when I went over to Nicaragua, that was like a candy store as far as tobacco, because learning tobaccos in DR versus Nicaragua, very different soils, everything else. So it was a good place to kind of cut my teeth on. That was for sure.
So there, Are there more options from the Nicaraguan tobacco, or just different from Dominican?
You know, you ask a classic Dominican person, and they're going to say no. There's more there, and Nicaragua.
Yeah.
No one.
From a layman standpoint, from somebody that's only been blending for a short period of time, I find more options in Nicaragua. But those lines are getting a little bit merged now, because you've got people making Nicaraguan cigars in Dominican Republic. You've got people making Dominican Republic cigars over there. So the lines are blurring on a lot of that. But I would say, from a personal experience, when I walked into Nicaragua, at least at that time in the beginning of the year, this year, when I did the LE blend, it was a little bit more eye-opening for me, is that I, at least at that moment, had access to a lot of different tobaccos.
So was there something that made you switch from Dominican to Nicaragua, or was it you just wanted to have some different blends, or was there some factors that made you want to try Nicaragua?
Yeah, it's a great question. Some of them were I'm nice to say that there are colleagues now in the industry that make cigars in Nicaragua, and they kind of kept saying, hey, look, you got to come over here. I like your DR stick, but, the profile's changed. Nicaraguan's obviously hot in the market right now, and I went over there as an experiment. I went over there to learn. I thought maybe someday I'd end up doing a blend over there, but I wasn't sure. And until I went over there, I wouldn't know if I wanted to do another blend in, Dominican Republic right away, or if I wanted something in Nicaragua. And when I got over there, it was an experiment, and I went and we bought tobacco and all this other thing. And so it really was just a natural evolution of learning more tobacco and learning different ways to play with it.
So now I want to talk, before I get into some of my next questions, I want to talk a little bit about the Nomad cigar that I smoked recently, which is the Fugitive 2, which was the Dominican. The tobacco is listed somewhat secret. If you had to describe for someone what that smoke was like, how would you describe that cigar to someone?
Well, in my opinion, the Dominican cigars have a lot of the earth tones, and I'm not one of those guys that has that palate that says, I'm tasting chocolate and boysenberries in the winter, all this other stuff. I have a lot of respect for the people. And I just don't.
Boysenberries in the winter are very different from the spring, so I'm glad you made that clarification.
Absolutely. And if you can get the winter in the first third, and then in the summer, I just don't have that Willy Wonka palate to kind of figure it out as it goes through the cigar. And again, I have a lot of respect for the people that do. My flavor profile of what I get out of cigars, I think, is a little bit more basic, and it's getting better. I'm learning more and more, particularly as I start, blending. I see them where they are, and I see what they, after they age for a while. I would say for me, the Dominican is much more of the earth tones. It's much more of the hay, the grassy tones. Right. You get the creaminess out of it.
Yep.
I don't find the Dominican cigars to be as strong by any means to the Nicaraguan. I've had nice conversations with some manufacturers in the DR that said, "Oh no, we can make much stronger ones than the Nicaraguan cigars." I just don't think I can't. I mean, I'm sure I'm not going to disrespect them, and maybe they can, but I could not get for myself as a medium to medium full, complex bodied cigar as an amateur compared to maybe what somebody else might be able to do at the DR. So it was much easier for me in Nicaragua. So you lose some of those flavor profiles.
So this cigar I smoked, I have to say, I'm not one to really go through the whole flavor wheel, right, when we review cigars.
Not after I just said that, I guess. I should have been honest.
No, that's okay. So this was a Fugitive 2. It's a 6-inch Perfecto. And it's a great size. It burned fantastic. I got a very predominant kind of roasted nuts, woody type flavor from it. That was very predominant throughout. And it was, as far as like the flavor meter goes for how much flavor you're getting from it, like that one flavor really dominated and was very persistent. And so if you like that flavor, you're going to love this cigar. And I really enjoyed it. So,
yeah, thank you. I think to me, now that I've gone to Nicaragua, the Dominican cigars for me they're not a roller coaster, at least the ones I have. I don't get like first third's this, second third's this, that thing as much. It's a consistent flavor profile if you've blended it right all the way through. If you like that flavor profile, then it's a home run for you.
Yeah.
You're looking for something more complex. Now look, the smoker 10 years ago or 12 or years ago, he bought one cigar, one size, one box. That's all that was in his humidor.
Yep. There's still there's still some of those smokers around today.
Yeah, and I think what we've evolved as consumers is that we've evolved into like wine drinkers are. You know, you may have white with this food, you may have red with this. You have different types of red. Do you want a Bordeaux? Do you want a Merlot? Do you want a Pinot Noir? So I think cigar smokers now have 8 to 12 different cigars at their disposal that they kind of rotate through. They'll probably have their core line, and their core line they'll probably smoke 50% of the smokes they have will be that core line. But the other times they're like, hey, I'm in the mood for something different, you know, and they'll try different things. They're much more open than they ever were. So for me, you know, I've got times a day that I'm more inclined to have a Dominican cigar or a mood or what I've eaten. And there are other times that I'm going to have a Nicaraguan cigar and get that experience. What experience am I going for?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So, Fred, as a blender, right, you don't actually own the farms in the various regions of Dominican or Nicaragua. What steps do you take to ensure quality of your cigars?
Well, I think it really starts with, you know, when I started it, I wasn't concerned with price. I mean, I obviously wanted to have a good price, but as a boutique, you know, I don't care how good your marketing is. I don't care if you got 20,000 followers on Twitter like I do and you're talking to people and everything else. If you don't have a good stick, then it doesn't do you any good. So in the very beginning, I leaned on the people that knew more than me, which was pretty much everybody. So, you know, and got their feedback. And then you really want to pair with the right people that are going to ensure that quality is important. The DR stick, you know, small factory in Tamboril, but a lot of experience in that factory. You know, I don't want to say the startup, but it's a small factory really nobody, you know, really has. And so, but I knew the experience of these people far outweighed what I'd get at other factories. And even recently having an opportunity to take that DR stick to another factory and actually make a considerable amount more money on it, I would never do that because I can't jeopardize the construction on that. I would honestly put my Dominican stick, again, quality-wise, against just about anything, including the big guys coming out of the DR as far as construction and everything else. I mean, they burn really, really good. And typically in the reviews last year, that was whatever, you know, kind of blew everybody away. So now that I'm worried on every stick I do afterwards, I've got to live up to that. It's like the whole Orson Welles thing. What am I going to do now? But so far it's worked out well. But I know what I know and I know what I don't know, and I try to really hook up with the right people.
Yeah, the Fugitive 2 burned really well for me.
Mm-hmm.
It was very well constructed. And the reviews I read, Will, and you said you agree, the reviews I read were all burned very well.
Was it red or wet?
Red? You love to pick on me when I slur my words, don't you?
Whatever.
It's early to be slurring. But
it is early to be slurring. I did another podcast before this one. So
what was the drink pairing in this routine here?
Mm-hmm. I paired my Fugitive 2 with water, but tonight
we're doing a Rebecca Creek, a fine Texas spirited whiskey that's from a friend of mine, Mr. Steve Drew, down in San Antonio, Texas.
Nice.
Ask Stogie later. It'll be Rebecca Creek.
Rebecca Creek.
It's a spicy whiskey, and it's going pretty well.
It does. It's pairing very well with the smoke.
Now, how often do you? Now, once you set your tones with the factory, do you go down on a periodic visit just to oversee what's going down?
It's a great question.
Yeah, good question. I mean, initially, yes. You know, it really just depends on the level of confidence you have and how much you think you have to oversee it. That blend was already out and the cigar was already rolled, you know, a year before it ever hit market. So my need to go back to DR is not really anywhere near what it might be for other guys having to kind of babysit or be involved once you have a level of confidence. The S307, to skip a whole cigar line here, the S307, which comes out next month, is out of AJ Fernandez's factory. So, there's nothing me walking down there is going to help anybody. I mean, those guys know what the hell they're doing.
No, but it's a good bird's eye view to see what's going down because what I do, I'm a manager of a local B&M, and we go down, and what we do is we keep some of the original boxes of the blend, and then we get re-released to a second and third line release just to smoke them to see. I mean, besides, you know what they're going to be 6 months from now, but you want to keep that consistency, though you cannot travel down there, you got to keep some of the older cigars with you just to see if there's any deviance, because it can happen.
You're absolutely right. I mean, you want to make sure there's consistency. I mean, the guy that bought, Nomads last year that goes to buy Nomad this year, if he's buying that same cigar, it should be identical. And if it can't be, then you have to look at, really, in my opinion, discontinuing the line or being on back order on the line, which nobody wants to do, which we've all smoked cigars that were like, man, last year this cigar was way better than it is this year.
Sure.
And even the big guys do that because they're cashing in. And that was one of the things I didn't really want to do. It's one of the reasons why the LE, which the Lot 1386, which I would have loved to have been able to make more of, that thing's just flying off the shelves. Yeah. It's almost sold out, and I just released it at the end of July at IPCPR. So if I could have made more, I would have, but I knew that I never would have been able to maintain that consistency because of the tobacco that I got a hold of for that cigar.
That's a smart move. And that's really a key thing is, it is a man-made product, so there is some variations, but you're trying to minimize those, and you do the best you can. That's it.
You're right. And you have people, though. I mean, look, I've learned a lot more of the game now. I've seen people, manufacturers now that I know a lot more than I did before. I mean, they'll change an entire wrapper, a significant change, but not really announce it and pass it off as the same or a binder or something like that. And you know what? Maybe your average guy's not going to know that, but the guy that was his bread and butter cigar, he'll figure it out.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. I agree with you 1,000%.
So, Fred, kind of along those lines, so you were kind of partnering with Gary Griffith, and now you've changed who you're partnered with. Is that correct?
No, not at all.
Oh, okay.
Gary, the deal with House Emilio is for distribution only.
Okay.
So House Emilio handles distribution. One of the struggles I had early on is that, look, I don't want to ship boxes out of my house or out of a warehouse and things like that. I don't want to hire 9 sales guys to go out there. I can only be on the road so much. So as a growing company, at least in the near future, it just got it out there so much faster. I mean, it's not. It's one of the bigger growing ones lately. But I mean, we've got about 75 to 80 stores, I think, right now that we did within 12-month period. That's great. I would not have been able to do that myself.
That's a smart move.
So tell us about the Esteli Lot 1386 project. How did that start?
That was the original back in January, going to Esteli just to learn the tobacco.
Okay.
And literally went through the fields, learned about soil, learned about way more about volcanoes than I did maybe when I was.
Oh, isn't it amazing?
And it was just, I mean, you can be on one side of the field, and then the field over, nearby is totally different, or at least significantly different because it was fed from another volcano that had a different depth and all the other stuff. So it started in the fields, bought tobacco, brought some people that really knew the tobacco and walked me through it. And one of the things I was initially focused on was the Ligero, which I do have a little bit of Nicaraguan Ligero in my Dominican line to give it a little bit more of a bump.
Nice.
And so I focused on that, and in doing so, we stumbled on was just a couple big bales of Ligero that was a little bit different. It had a little bit, literally you're opening up bales and you're rolling right there and smoking just straight Ligero. So you better have the stomach for it.
Yeah, I bet.
Oh, try eating one of the leaves right off the plant.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I was doing. It was at some different farms.
Oh.
They were looking at me. Isn't it interesting to do that? Try that.
Oh, it's great. So we went back, and I found these two, and the one that someone showed me them, and I'm like, wow, and it's not enough for anybody to do anything with. You can get 5,000 sticks out of it. Initially, I thought I was going to use a half a leaf of that Ligero in the blend. And so I bought those. We bought a bunch of other tobacco, went back, and then it was just literally a big table laid out with all the different tobaccos, including that Ligero. And you know what? Start learning to blend. So I'm like, well, I'm writing it down on a clipboard, give it to the guy. He'd roll it, smoke it, and just doing that to no end. And at the end, the idea behind that is it ended up being a cigar because, one, I really liked it. And I could only do so much. There wasn't a big risk if if everybody liked it, great. If they didn't like it, I'm like, hey, this is just a learning experience for me. And it ended up being way better than I think any of us anticipated. And it ended up being a full leaf of the Ligero because it had a sweetness. It wasn't a pepper bomb.
Right.
It had a little bit of a sweetness to it. It didn't bury you. Coop can probably tell you he's got the palate better than I do. But So what I wanted to do is I wanted to create a cigar that mimicked my journey from the DR to Nicaragua. So some people would say, well, it's not an incredibly complex cigar, and it wasn't meant to be. The idea is that, hey, if I got a guy that's a DR smoker, he's thinking of trying a Nicaraguan cigar, how do you bring him over there? So I had a full leaf of Esteli Lot, but I didn't want to bury the guy, so as opposed to choosing some of the other tobaccos, I loaded it with jalapa, which has a similar tone, for lack of a better description, because it's really a lot different, but it had a similar tone that it didn't had a sweetness to it, it didn't overwhelm you, put a jalapa binder on it, and I still put the Ecuadorian Habano wrapper on it. So the idea was to create that transitional cigar. It's not a roller coaster of complexity, although I'm reading some of the reviews, a lot of guys get more out of it than, like I said, I have the ability to. But the idea was a transitional cigar, and hey, this is my learning experience personified in a box of cigars.
See, when you say ability, I think you're downplaying your learning journey, because what people may think this tasting, it's just very arbitrary. There's no right or wrong. Do you agree with that? You know what I'm saying? You're saying you're not picking up nuances. I think you're probably doing a lot better than what you're saying, because a lot of people, and then in our room of 3 smokers here, not all 3 of us are going to taste the same cigar at the same time, even though it's the same cigar.
Now, Fred, going back to something you hinted towards before, and it's something that we've talked about on the show recently, and actually had some pretty in-depth conversations about. You released a limited edition before the Core Line S307. Now, is there a strategy for releasing limited editions in core lines, and how do you provide the balance between a limited edition and a core line in your
I don't have a fucking clue.
Good job.
That is the best answer ever to that. That is better answer than I ever would have anticipated.
Okay, but I'll follow it up.
Look, I think
that was awesome.
A true LE, in my opinion, is something that, what I don't like is I don't like the BS LEs, where someone comes up and goes, oh, this is a limited edition, we only got this tobacco, and all of a sudden next year that's their full line, that they really had plenty of it. I think an LE should legitimately be, as this one was, there was only so much of this tobacco.
Right.
I went back down before this was even released, and I'd leaked it out to some people. I went back down to Nicaragua to try to find more of this tobacco, and I was struggling with, how am I going to expand this LE and still make the same cigar? Because for all intents and purposes, it was a winner, and now the market has finally proven that. So the answer was, because I was making it way too complex, the answer would have been actually just to do different sizes. I could have said the Toro was really the LE and release some other sizes of the same blend. The truth of the matter was I could not replicate the blend because I could not find any significant amount of consistency in the Ligero that I found in the first place. So that's an LE. If a production line, to me, and some people I think use LEs as an excuse to test their blend they want to do.
Yep.
So they say, oh, well, I've only got 150 boxes or 1,000 boxes or 5,000 boxes. And all of a sudden when they sell out, it's like, well, hey, look, we do have some more of that tobacco after all. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think the production line, you go into a production line like the S307 or the Dominican line my intent is this is a good enough cigar to stick around. If it doesn't, then you know what? You're going to take it off anyway.
Right?
No, that's a great point. So you mentioned different sizes. A lot of the cigars that you've released are of a 50 ring gauge or better. Is there plans for a smaller ring gauge, or did that just not work into your plans yet?
I haven't really come up with something below a 50. In some ways, I cheat that in the Perfectos a little bit, particularly the Vagabond. The Vagabond is 4 5/8 by 54, but the 54 is at the very middle.
Yep.
So it tapers very extreme to both sides, which is kind of a way to cheat that overall ring gauge. I have not successfully, for myself, come up with a blend below 50 that I'm happy with. I would love to do a Lancero. I think Lanceros, from a pure smoking standpoint, are some of the best ones to really get a flavor of the tobacco, because the ratio of the wrapper to the filler and everything else. And the mistake a lot of people make on Lanceros, as I did, was that we smoke them too fast. And they're constant chimneys, and they're constantly too hot.
I did that in the beginning too. Yep.
Yeah. But I just have not found the ability for myself yet to get below the 50 ring gauge.
That will come.
So tell us about the S307 project. Now that's the one that's been released, and that's one of your core lines, correct?
It will be released at the end of the month. That's the one I'm smoking every day right now.
Okay.
It's a Nicaraguan filler. It's a box press Sumatra wrapper. And honestly, right now it's smoking really good. I mean, I don't want to jinx it. You know, I don't really want to, you know, say, oh, it's gonna be great, and then all of a sudden, you know, have it not be. But everybody that's had it so far has been very impressed. So I'm hoping we'll see.
So who do you give? You said everyone that's been smoking it. Who do you give your cigars to test out?
For the most part, I start with people I know that can look at cigars for what they're supposed to be. And for the most part, that's really other manufacturers or they're key people that, you know, that I know that blend, that I have respect for in the industry, that I've either known before I started the industry, you know, in the cigar industry, or now during I've met. And I'll just say, hey, this is what I'm playing with. I was surprised when I started. When I walked in, I really wasn't sure how open some people would be. I didn't know if you'd walk in as a new boutique and everybody would just like basically just trash you and try and beat you down. You know, I mean, I think there's a scarcity mentality and there's an abundance mentality, and either people believe there's enough for everybody, or they're just scarcity and they're going to, you know, well, if somebody buys your stick, they're not going to buy mine. So I was amazed how receptive key individuals in the industry were when I said, I'm playing with the cigar. Can I get your feedback on it? And I was surprised how many of them were like, you know, yeah, you know, here's what I do or do differently or whatever. And these are guys that I know that aren't going to BS me. If I gave them a crappy stick, they would say, man, don't even think about it. So they're people I respect.
Yep. So who do you admire most in the cigar industry and why?
I would have to pick two. One is Abu Yavazian, who I'm honored to be able to smoke with 2-3 times a week and have for years. You know, the guy's 87 years old. He's still out there. He's still, you know, he's very passionate. You know, one of the stories I remember with Abo's always at big events and goes around for his birthday. He's got like, you know, 50 birthday parties, you know, and he goes to Europe and everything. Him and I just went to a small cigar bar, not even on the map. Nobody would even know about it. 10 guys there, and he walked out of there and he says, you know, this is the real industry. This is the 10 guys that are smoking, that are passionate. So I have a lot of respect for somebody that has that much passion for a cigar and that much pride in it. You know, as I've learned more about AJ Fernandez, particularly doing my next cigar out at his factory, you know, he is a mad scientist, constantly pushing himself on the tobacco and the growth. I have a lot of respect for Jonathan Drew, for somebody that said, you know, screw the norm, I'm going to do what I want to do and see how it plays out. People that kind of rattle up the industry. Pete's another one. I remember hearing Pete on an interview, you know, and I won't go into the details of it, but basically the announcer was very pro another cigar and basically belittled him. And Pete just stepped up and said, you know, that's not the case. And you know, so I have a lot of respect for people that are willing to do their own thing. And ignore the press. I don't know that I have the ability to ignore the press to the degree that some of these people do, but I have a lot of respect for anybody willing to go out there and do their own thing, regardless of what other people think.
What is your most favorite cigar to smoke of your own blends?
Right now, it's the 1386. I have a feeling that the original Fugitive, which you can't get anymore, was probably my all-time favorite of the Dominican. I'll tell you, if the S307 plays the way I think it's going to play, that will probably be my favorite, only because I'm going to run out of the LE, so I better pick a different one.
Right. So what about other blends? You have some other brands or blends that you like to smoke? Other
people's?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I'm always trying new ones. You know, I like what Sam Lassie is doing. I like to see him back in the game. I think both his cigars are great. The black may or may not be your profile because it's got the Kentucky Woodfire in it.
Yeah.
But I love somebody, you know, and I'm not speaking out of turn, but you know, Sam, when we were at dinner actually up north, he had said, you know, any real blender or cigar maker that found that tobacco would at least play with it.
Yeah.
Not necessarily make a cigar, but it would at least play with it. And I got a lot of respect for that. And I like both of his cigars that he put out.
Yeah.
I love the San Latano Oval. which is really what was on my radar, why I wanted to work out of AJ's factory, because I like what he did on that. I think that's a great stick. I have a lot of cigars that will never see market, so it's not really fair to talk about those. There are other manufacturers that have their own, like, it's like an LE within an LE. It doesn't go to public.
Yeah. I've heard about some of those.
Yeah, and there's some great cigars that will just never see the market as far as that's concerned.
And that's really just because they don't have enough tobacco to mass produce them.
Somewhat, or it's outside their brand. I'm not going to mention any names, but they're known for a very specific cigar, and for them to put out another cigar that's so radically different would jeopardize. I don't think it would jeopardize, but they feel it would jeopardize their core group of smokers. So it's a cigar that they'll just never put out to market. I like what Edgar's doing, One Shot One Kill. I like the stuff he's playing with. Matt Booth, I like the stuff he's playing with. I like to try new cigars. I first and foremost, before I was ever making cigars, I was a passionate consumer of cigars.
Right.
And I go through phases. I mean, I would sit there and I'd have one that I'd be smoking. Like I said, 50% of the time I'd be smoking one. Then 6 months later, I'd jump into something else. But like I said, as a consumer, we've got so many great choices right now. And I'm not saying, look, only smoke Nomads. I'm just hoping there's a spot in the humidor for people.
Excellent.
Sure.
So what's next for you and Nomad Cigars? I mean, other than the 1386 project you have going.
1386 is done. S307 probably will be done. It's already rolled. We'll probably be out. I was hoping to have it. I have a cigar tour of like 2 weeks where I start with Delaware Cigar Fest. And I've got like 10 events in 12 days, and then I finish up at Light Up Charlotte. I was hoping the S307 would be ready for that.
Yep.
It's real close, but I've already pretty much. I went down to Nicaragua last week, and I really think that it's going to be after. It's going to be a week or two afterwards. I just don't want to put it out early.
That's a
smart
move. That's
we smoke a lot of new blends here, and I tell you what, a good number of them come out really young, right?
And that's Marvin would say.
And I think some of that, and again, I know 1% of what everybody else does. I mean, collectively, you guys know 10 times more than me, I'm sure. But I think that, there's the one side you want to rush it to market, and the blends now are getting so sophisticated that there's two. One is a lot of these cigars, like I've got to stop smoking the LE 1386 because I'm dying to find out what this thing smokes a year from now.
Right.
If you have a great cigar in the beginning, it's not abnormal for 6 months, 12 months for it to be like, wow, it's just even better. What I don't like is when people put a cigar out, and I don't want to be the guy that puts out a cigar and goes, hey, don't smoke this, hold on to it for another 3 weeks or something like that. I don't want to do that. But the blends are so sophisticated that they're maturing long after they're released still.
Absolutely. Well, Fred, so you're going to do a whirlwind tour here in the U.S. Coming up very soon?
Yep. Got 2 weeks there, and then I go back down to Nicaragua for 2 months, November through January, barring maybe flying back for an event or two during that time. But it will be to probably look at what you have to think ahead. So what blends will I look at for the spring if there's another blend? What will I have learned from the blends I've already done? And then also then by then you're July, your IPCPR. Do you want a new cigar then or not?
Yeah. That's interesting. Thinking ahead. Well, Fred, thank you very much for appearing on the Stogie Geeks. Does anyone else have any other questions for Fred? Will?
Yeah, let me ask one. Fred, going back to the original Fugitive, which was limited. So that was a limited size. Why is that one just limited? Is that something that would ever maybe make a comeback?
That's a great question. I would love to bring that cigar back, and I've had a lot of people that have had it that have come to me and saying, hey, can you put that cigar out? The only problem with that cigar is really a price issue. One, there's only a handful of rollers that can get that cigar right, and what that is that particular cigar is just under 6 inches, and it comes to a razor sharp point on both sides, and that's the original Fugitive.
Is that the one that I sent you on Twitter?
It is.
Fugitive
it is.
2,
Somehow you had a hold of the original Fugitive. So
I think you sent it to us.
That was clearly a mistake.
Never
would actually sent that. No, I'm kidding.
Because my immediate question was, can you send more?
I have a lot of the issue is
Yeah, and then Fred. So I'm sorry, Fred, but
No,
Fred,
use my terminology. I don't have it anymore.
well, no, then Fred sent a picture of like this entire rack of these cigars, and it was like I'm salivating, you know.
I can get you some, but the issue is really price. The issue is that the time it takes rollers to do that and do it right and live up to the construction that they have in the rest of that DR line, that has to be about a $13 cigar on the shelves.
I think I saw an MSRP of $198 for a box of 20. Was the information I got from the original ones, right?
Yeah. So it's just a price issue. Could I bring it back, and do I hope to? Yeah, I think once I've proven my ground enough between the original line, the LE, the S307, then I think I have permission to go in there with a $12 cigar.
Yeah.
I think, and again, I don't make any more money on that $12 cigar than I do off a $9 cigar.
Right.
The issue is just the time and the tobacco and the quality controls are much higher on that cigar, just to get it right. So, as a new boutique, if I'd have thrown a $12 cigar out on the shelves, I think it just would have been walked by. Now I think probably maybe, by next year, or maybe, hopefully I have permission to throw that cigar out at that.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, Fred, thank you very much for appearing on the Stogie Geek Show. It was wonderful to have you on.
It was refreshing for me to hear somebody that didn't claim to know everything. And although I think you're holding back a little bit.
Well, I thought we were going to get like movie trivia or something. I didn't know what the show was.
We're just
I was ready for anything. We just talked about cigars.
In some of my other shows, I do have a list of like non-topical questions, like questions that don't relate to the topic of the show. The most favorite question that we ask of our guests in some of our other shows, which I totally stole from someone else's show, from Bully Beatdown, actually. Yeah. And so, Fred, I'll ask you the one-off question.
Fire away.
In a game of Ask Grabby Grabby, do you prefer to go first or second?
I don't know the game.
I should qualify that. In the popular game of Ask Grabby Grabby, do you prefer to go first or second?
Depends on what you're
I
drinking.
don't know the game.
There you go, Fred.
How lame am I? Wow.
No, so we've asked that question for over a year now in our other show, and we actually have listeners that come up to me and say, "I've been Googling for this Ask Grabby Grabby game, and I can't find it anywhere." I'm like, that's because it doesn't exist. And they're like, oh, I get it now. And we've gotten dozens and dozens of guests to answer that question.
I saw it in the
game.
Olympics, and
Yes.
it was very impressive in the Olympics.
Volleyball.
Obviously, it would make sense that any of the Swedish people are going to be better at that game. Clearly. Background.
Women's volleyball would be a great.
But what I'm going to do, Fred, we have, like I said, I manage a B&M up here. We got to get together and bring that up to the shop, because we have a big shop up here, and that'd be something I might be interested in bringing up. I really would. So I'll get your contact.
Well, I'll tell you what. I don't know what they have left in the warehouse. I know that I have like 40 boxes of the LEs personally. So if they don't have them and you guys want 5 boxes, I'll hook you guys up.
Okay, we'll be talking.
Excellent. Fred, thank you very much for appearing on the Stogie Geek Show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Fred.
And with that, we'll take a short break. We're going to come back and talk about our Stogies for the week.
Never enough to satisfy. Never a dull moment I can say. Tomorrow is an uncertainty. Too busy, too busy, too busy wanting. 'Cause we are water to flow, to feel full of meaning, to follow these vibrations, to save the mind from frustration. We are water to flow, to feel full of meaning, to follow these vibrations, to save the mind from frustration. Never enough time. Never enough time. There seems to be never enough time to see all you wanted, but what you've seen was downplayed by the wanting. What can we do? What can we do to make this happen? What can we do? What can we do to make this happen?
I like when a cigar comes out and it's got a
Hey,
little
Fred?
hair on it, dude.
Hey, Fred, you're more than welcome to stick around if you got things to do. I totally understand that. We're going to do our next segment. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of different cigars that we've been smoking. Like I said, you're more than welcome to stick around. Or if you got things to do, I don't want to hold you up either.
All right.
We'd love to have you,
I
though.
hope
But
it went okay for you.
yes, the interview went fantastic.
Oh,
Thank you very
phenomenal.
much.
It was a
Yeah,
great
Thank
interview,
you,
man.
Fred.
I mean what I said, too. It was
and again,
refreshing
Fred,
to hear